This is a special Waupaca City Council meeting.
And thank you for coming out tonight. I hereby call this meeting of the Deer Management Ad Hoc Committee to order. Henry, would you read the open meeting statement?
I will. This meeting and all other meetings of the Common Council and its appropriate committees are open to the public. Proper notices were posted and given to the press in accordance with Wisconsin state statutes so that the citizens may be aware of the time, place, and agenda of this meeting.
Thank you. In attendance tonight, we have all of the 9 committee members that were at the previous meeting. In addition, we have WDNR Representative John Kaiser and Police Helgeson, yeah, and then a couple of reporters. First item on the agenda then is to approve the agenda. Unless there are any additions or anything to be changed on the agenda, I'd take a motion to approve. Moved by Anthony, second by Renowicki. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda is approved. The minutes from the November 14th meeting also call for approval. There was one very minor correction I would like to see made, and that was Alder Chestnut's was characterized as representing the 4th and 6th wards, and it's actually the 6th ward of the 4th district. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Okay. That's the only thing I caught. Anybody else have anything to change? I'll take a motion to approve them.
So moved.
Whitman and Rand, second by Rand. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. I hope you've had a chance to review the several-page document that we received from Wisconsin Rapids or the metro area. I'd just like to open it for discussion and see what your feelings are about that plan that they have.
I feel that it actually is a pretty good template for something that we could manage here, depending if we could get property owners to jump on board with that. To that end, I think if we could design a survey to get the public's opinion, because we all know that people like to be heard.
Especially, I think, on this topic.
Yeah.
Yes, they do.
Any other comments?
At the very least, it's a good outline of details that we need to be aware of.
All right, good point. John, did you get a chance to review that document? Do you know what we're talking about?
Yes, I have it here in front of me, and I was able to brief through it. Yep.
Okay. Any feedback from DNR perspective?
I guess just to reflect on what Warden Dremel and Jake Free said last time, we want to make sure we're working with you all and working with the city. I'm not, outside of reviewing this document, entirely familiar with how Wisconsin Rapids program runs, but having a similar program in Stevens Point, I think that I think we're looking down the right route as far as organizing it. You know, trying to make sure hunters are accountable, if you will, on who's out there, as well as potentially sending out the survey to see kind of what the general consensus is. So again, whatever I can do to support you in that.
Okay.
My only question how do we find an individual to take charge of this program? I'm assuming this committee would we turn to the city police department to help us find somebody? Or, I mean, where would we go?
Good question.
I don't know if this committee is qualified, because I mean, I think they did a really good job of, and I think from listening a little bit to, you know, Chief Hozell or whatever, I think something like this, I think he would support, but obviously they obviously found somebody that manages this program for them.
Henry, you spoke to him, didn't you?
Yeah, I did, and actually, he's a hunter, and he suggested that you have a hunter coordinate it. Because they know the rules, they know, you know, how to conduct themselves in the woods and what the proper etiquette is. So yeah, I think he just came into it because he liked to hunt and was asked to do it.
Well,
Well, looking at the Conservation Club and some other organizations, maybe they could tip someone off. It appears that this Mr. Hobbs was working for the Park and Recs Department prior to them establishing this program. I don't know if there's anybody over at Park and Recs who has any sort of liaisons with any other animal control issues, or we could investigate.
We have a great number of hunters that obviously work for the city of Waupaca. Is that a conflict of interest?
No, I would say if they're not doing it on city time necessary, unless it was a assigned duty and we carved out time for it. We'd have to talk about that.
Yeah, that'd be, I think, something council would want to structure. We could make a recommendation one way or another, but council would have final say on that.
Okay.
Any other thoughts on that plan? It is well thought out. I think I also have the sense that this fellow is maybe not burning out, but putting in a lot of more hours than he wanted to, perhaps.
Well, he made the comment that he's lost some friends over this because, you know, they go through and they test out. And once you test out, you're expected to harvest some animals. Some don't, or they don't focus on it. The other thing he said in their community, mostly got complaints from other hunters because they're taking their deer. I mean, 800 deer out of circulation, I guess, over 10 years. And he said, well, I think it's alluded to in the write-up that the property owners are really the key because they got to give you access. Now, of course, the city has some large land, whole, you know, parcels. So I suppose if the council wants to proceed with this, that would be a logical place to start. And I think that might be where this Mr. Hobbs started with the Park and Rec because they had larger tracts.
Do they hunt year-round on this project?
Well, yeah, outside of deer season, they will be hunting in August, I think he alluded to in his annual report.
I think they had their permits were ag permits, so those have I've experienced those. Those make for a nice early harvest if you have them.
How does an ag permit work?
More or less what it is an ag damage permit where more or less a landowner, a farmer, and oftentimes I suppose a municipality, they can show that, you know, we've got X amount of deer that are causing this problem, and from that they can get extra permits in addition to your normal harvest permits, as well as certain seasons depending on what's set. So again, in this case it looks like August 1st might be the start date. Those permits would then allow for those extra deer to be harvested with different season regulations, more or less.
And then I think there's a once-a-year permitting or evaluation or report that they can turn in.
Yep.
As I recall, all of the meat is donated too. Is that not correct? Is that something we would want to support too, or would we want the hunters to be able to keep some of the meat as well?
Well, I think that it would be all right if the hunters were able to keep the meat. If they, a lot of times people who are doing this have probably already stocked up pretty well. But I think also they had a stipulation for the landowner to also request an animal if they wished. But I think the donating would definitely be good PR. People like to hear that. It maybe makes people more amenable to the program who would otherwise be indifferent to it.
Are they collecting a fee to hunt also?
Do they collect the fees?
Yeah, there's the hunters
there
so
is
much per deer or something like that.
Right.
I think it was a minor where I saw something like 18, 20 bucks a
$20
hunter,
$20
more or less
per
to
deer.
cover their costs, arrows, so on and so forth.
There must be something, this is probably an attorney question, that they are both volunteers. And so the money they're being paid is to recoup their costs of doing it. And they're not being paid. And I think in talking with Mr. Hobbs, I thought he said $2 of every deer harvest that goes to managing the program. So I don't know if that goes towards, if he gets a stipend, I didn't ask him that.
I thought I saw somewhere where they had to sign off on a liability.
Yeah.
The hunters, yeah.
The hunters do.
The property owners there's apparently no liability for the property owner, the way they set this up.
So you talked to him specifically on this report? I know it starts with the thing of assessing the problem, but they did things like questionnaires being sent out ahead of time and so forth. One of the things that has struck me quite a bit, again, being somewhat new in the area, I don't think a lot of people in Waupaca realize that you could shoot a deer inside the city. That, like my neighbor, one neighbor told me there's no hunting of deer in Waupaca. And I wonder if, just from looking at some of the numbers of deer in and around the area where I live, I don't think there's many deer there now, and there's got to be some reason. I think maybe the word has gotten out that you can do that. I know, like Steve said last time, he didn't know, can I shoot one off my back deck? I wonder whether there's been numerous people in the community said, I don't want to run into trouble with the city or anything of that nature. They're a problem to me. And now, if we let them know that they could do that, whether that might alleviate some of the problem. Just letting the people in Waupaca know they could do that.
Now, Lauren, you're talking archery, bows.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Not guns.
Not guns in that way.
That
No.
would have to be granted by the chief prior to that.
No, there's a $10 for 2 years. You're able to have that for 2 years, but that's just to be able to be shooting an archery in your backyard. That's not a permit for hunting deer. You'd certainly have to, if you're harvesting deer, you have to go by the DNR's regulations. Don't you have to have a hunting deer license? You know, whether you're hunting in city of Waupaca or outside the city. I think there could be some kind of a situation on the money. I think if people would know that you got to tell the people you got to have a $10 permit first, you know, before you're shooting anything in town, and there you might come up with, the city might come up with some of the money that they had. I think if you might check with the police chief and find out how many new $10 permits just for shooting your bow in town have picked up in the last year.
And that's something that Brian was gonna check into. I don't know if he gave you any information on that.
For 2016, we had 21 permits, Tenella permits. And that's up from previous years.
But that's a 2-year permit.
Yeah.
Getting the permit was one thing, but also Chief Ozell also alluded to the fact that, Lauren, you can bow hunt in your backyard, Lauren, and if you hit a deer, that's fine. But if that deer goes into your neighbor's yard, you will be prosecuted if you don't have permission to be in his yard. That's trespassing. So all of a sudden, I mean, that's where I think it came into like I don't remember what it was, 100 yard
100
rule,
yards.
100 yard rule or whatever.
Permission
That
from
you
the
better
neighbors.
have permission from all of your neighbors around the area that if you hit a deer and it goes onto their property, that you're allowed to come on the property and so-called harvest the deer. I think that's going to be one of the issues with the bow hunting, is that you have a great majority of the public that are going to allow hunters, in a sense. I mean, and that's where you had this group that, because all of a sudden, I mean, if you're a landowner in town and all of a sudden you see some guy in your backyard with a deer, I guess you want to know what's going on.
Well, I think
I would-
it
I
would be
would-
published that the hunt would be going on. It wouldn't be a
Yeah.
surprise, you know.
No, it would be
Yeah.
published and it wouldn't be a surprise, but if you've given permission, then it's okay. But if you there are those people that won't give permission. We all know that. I mean, it's just gonna, so.
And that's just, you know, then they don't.
Yeah.
I think, you know, again, I think a survey, you know, just a simple one that we could draft up 5 questions telling folks we're looking at a program. Do you support such a program? Would you participate in such a program? You know, just simple yes, no answers, maybe, whatever. Would you grant a hunter permission to hunt on your property? Or would you, maybe not that, but would you allow a hunter to track an animal that he or she has hit and has gone onto your property? And now people are kind of aware of things, that this is out there, so we won't get this sort of, you know, this blowback if we suddenly announce we're going to do something like this and people have felt that they haven't had any input, you know. Yeah, and also just a general comment box or something on the survey if people want to type in a little bit more, just to get a feel for what people's attitudes toward this is, instead of trying to guess what they might feel.
Have we conducted surveys like that before, Henry? What's the mechanism for doing it?
Well, I'd probably do something in our water bill and maybe direct somebody to go online to catch all the online folks. But maybe keep it in paper form in the water bill so people don't have access to a computer, don't want to use it, they could still fill it off and drop it off. So we'd probably have both ways, I would think.
Mhm.
And then, of course, you know, we have the city radio station, and we could push people to the city website to go fill out the survey and all like that. So I think we'd want to get an article maybe out there or something as well. But I think it would be a fairly easy task. We'd probably want to allow a couple weeks for people to, you know, if you're comfortable passing that questionnaire off maybe on to staff to fill out, or, you know, does the committee want to see it before it goes out? We could just send it back to you. You wouldn't need a meeting. You guys could all comment on it. But to Sue's point, I think simple, keeping it simple.
Keep it simple.
Where we can say this shouldn't take you more than a couple minutes to
Right.
fill out.
And, you know, have, you know, embed a little comment window if somebody wants to, you know, elaborate more, has questions, you know, and get the, you know, on the survey, I would, you know, it'd be nice to have their, you know, their name, their address, you know, as we go further ahead, you know, if they don't want to, I guess. But, you know, we don't need somebody from outside of city, you know, it's not going to really apply to them, start weighing in on our thing.
Yeah, and something like, what's it called, the Survey Monkey?
Yeah, Survey
Yeah,
Monkey.
they do all the analytical piece of it, right? Which would be really cool, so then we don't have all that staff time trying to compile the answers. But we'd have to do something, if by the handwritten submissions, we'd have to put something together, but I don't know, this is a topic you might get some pretty good response.
No, I talked to Aaron Jensen earlier today, you know, just to clarify, because I wanted to make sure on this. See, they do this thing with the geese, and they get a permit. They have a permit every year, he said, and they've been working with the, what is it, Mirror Lake, Shadow Lake?
Friends of Mirror and Shadow Lake.
Yeah, that kind of direction, you know, to try and keep the goose population down. And like somebody here mentioned, it was 4 years ago that they did an extensive one. They do a few things along the line, you know, monitoring the goose population and so forth. And so I guess there's a permit that we have to get from the DNR, I think it is, to be able to, you know, which I'm sure that they will be willing to give us in setting something up. But just some of the conversation here today with the time of the year that some of this hunting is done and so forth, and how it's done, there are ways to get the deer congregated into an area. And I used to live in Texas, and they had various ways that they hunted deer down in Texas that you could get your deer congregated and shot in various ways. I don't know whether that's permittable here in the state of Wisconsin.
I guess to address that, I'm guessing when you refer to congregating deer, you're referring to feeding or baiting deer.
Yeah.
No.
I would say that at this point, it would be hard to permit that on a case-by-case basis, simply because it is a large issue we run into county-wide and, dare I say, city-wide as far as feeding goes, which, if I may, is probably part of the reason we're in the deer number situation we're in, as well as the deer in the city. It is an idea, but I can't say that it's something that we could guarantee by any means.
I know, for instance, looking at things at Fleet Farm, they have a thing that you can set up in monitors, and we had this down in Texas too, where the corn would go out at 9 o'clock in the morning, and by 9:15 you had a herd of deer where they're eating corn. I mean, you did it over a long period of time. You know, I mean, you set it up for several weeks or something like that, and just like ringing the dinner bell, you know, and those were kind of situations that if you had people that were responsible and so forth, I don't know whether they use that at all in some of these other cities or something like that, but they sell them. Even though it's against the law, I think, you know, in that kind of direction.
Sometimes the survey is so vague that you don't get the answers you want. I like the survey that's here, with Canvas, because it spends a lot of time and that would come back to us with questions. That is, and I wonder about rental properties. Would that just be between the property owner and the vendor, whether the deer should be taken off that home? I don't think this survey mentions that, but that was what I was thinking of before, because in my neighborhood there are many homes that are rentals. And most people have children, so they might have a different opinion than the
I guess if I can add one thing from, my legal perspective as well as being a hunter myself, of course, and to address the trespassing concerns that we've talked about so far this meeting and the past meeting, of course, there are laws in place and then through the city to get permits to hunt currently. But as we've talked about, and I think as we will continue to talk about, even in rental situations, you run into issues where it comes to not only access to those deer, say, what if it runs onto someone else's property? How do I get it? But also, whether, again, it's out in the county, out in the country, or now in the city, if we want to handle those deer and get to them, working as this plan does with the landowners, with property owners, hand in hand, not only addresses that trespass issue, but would also allow for more access to the deer. So perhaps another way to look at it, as well as just again in looking through this, I think this plan does do a pretty good job of addressing the legal and ethical sides of the hunt, where of course you have the blanket law that allows for hunting within cities, but this goes again that next step up to vet hunters, make sure that they are, ethical, proper hunters for hunting within the city, and then also promoting those laws that, we want to add under the special circumstances. So again, just food for thought, I guess.
Well, the one comment that was made, if you're shooting deer in June and July or something of that nature, you're talking, these are not deer that are going to be much usable as far as sharing meat with somebody, because you're going to have a lot of your fawns and things of that nature that are, they're just not of great value at that time, and that kind of thing. The time of the year of having the hunt and so forth would make a difference, I think.
I don't know that we, necessarily want to be hunting during the summer months at all, I mean, for those reasons and just activity, I mean, you can still be operating with ag permits, I believe, throughout a good portion of the year. It does not have to be just when you start to get them. You can be hunting in the winter. So we wouldn't have to have...
I don't know this. When does archery season start? Is it in September or October?
Yeah, the normal archery season's roughly the middle of September.
To January.
According to Mr. Hobbs, the ag permit allows hunting before, during, and after the posted season.
Right, it's a case-by-case system, I suppose, yeah. Yep.
But in that case, we would also have to consider how we would dispose of something that was not meat worthy, something that could not be used by a needy family or the hunter or the property owner. It would be totally something to be aware of before we face the problem. I think there are a lot of details, a lot of questions. Have we really begun at the beginning with assessing how many deer we have and how serious the problem is? Or are we getting an overview to see if we should go that far?
I think we have data that shows we have a pretty dense population of deer in the city. And that was part of the original packet. And
Well, we did talk about it somewhat last week, but last month there were some surprises in it, like just where are the pockets and how will we deal with those? But all I'm really saying is that there are a lot of details that will come out if the survey is too simple, then people won't know how to answer. And if it's too detailed, maybe that doesn't work either. You always have to be careful that a survey says what you want it to say and makes it possible for people to answer, say yes or no or short answer.
I guess the initial survey that I was imagining, a simpler one, was more to get a general sense of support or not for a program. and not to disseminate all the details of the program. I mean, once getting the feedback would allow us to design the questionnaire that is for the landowner who wants to participate in the program.
Yeah, and generally that's a good idea. The easier or shorter the survey is, the more likely people are to respond.
Well, I think what they did in the Wisconsin Rapids area is, the first thing they did was to try to assess the problem from the public's point of view. I mean, I think we have a serious deer problem. I mean, I have 6 to 8 deer standing in my front yard just about every single night with nothing left. But from the public's point of view, I guess, to send it out, in what Wisconsin Rapids found out was that 76%, which we don't know what will be here, said, yeah, there's a problem. Then they went to the next step and really kind of, you know, asked newspapers, radio stations, and so on to kind of find out what to do. In a lot of a lot of respondents, when they said they probably were going to be bow hunting, things like this, they still got pretty close to 70% back that said, yeah, continue, take care of the problem and things. I'm not sure how long this situation will go. I mean, they've been doing it for how many years?
12 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
But,
that this does have, I think we have to think about the public relations aspect of this. For those of you that were involved in the goose roundup a number of years ago, there were people that were verbal about saving these geese, and even though they're a nuisance, they're a health concern at the beach and everything. So I think anything we can do to communicate, like the survey, and kind of ease people into this is good. And I really appreciated the plan from Wisconsin Rapids, because, I mean, there are people that are hunters, whether it be with a gun or a bow, that I wouldn't want hunting in my backyard. And I like the idea that people have to be kind of vetted to make sure that we don't have a bunch of crazies running around.
well, I think from the city's police department, I think they would appreciate that also. I don't think they want to be, I don't think they want to be getting called out nightly for a landowner and a hunter going nose to nose with each other, so,
Plus the fact that you have a list of names.
right.
So they, from the police department standpoint, they would know who these people are.
Yeah, we would obviously have to be involved in some way with the process. The thing I would question, though, is, you know, myself as well as anyone else that's worked nights, we can kind of tell you where the deer congregate that night, and I'm just wondering if we couldn't address each one of those areas one at a time. Like your house over there, they probably come over from the swamp or over by the recycling center.
Sure. I mean, in the cemetery, I mean,
Cemeteries.
this is where I think we'd have to look for the city, you know, to get permission on city land. I mean, hunting in the evening or just at dusk, or, you know, I'm not a bow hunter or whatever, but boy, I would think sitting in the cemetery would be, in so many ways, somewhat safe and ideal.
And
Well,
ironic.
I mean, you know, I mean, it's, you know, well, yeah, but it's, you know, it's an area that has got a little bit of space and not in our backyard. Although I would allow them to hunt in my backyard too, so, but, or front yard.
The sidewalk. Okay.
As long as I can get my neighbor's permission to come onto his property.
We're gonna go a little farther than that.
Can I get your permission, Henry?
We'll get down to South Park.
Yeah.
Well, I want to remind you that the reason this committee got formed is because there is a perception already that there is a deer management problem within the city limits. And it is our job to bring some sort of recommendation forward to council for action, or whatever that is. Now, there are things that we can be doing in the meantime. The questionnaire, for example, I think we have, we're authorized to do something like that. But as far as, say, setting up a hunting program within the city limits, that's something I think that council has to make the decision on. We can make the recommendation, but council has to make that decision. So I'd like to come back to this questionnaire issue for a moment or two and try to refine that a little bit and deal with what questions we would ask and what is the mechanism we would use and how long would we have it out there and so on. Any suggestions on that? Sue, you had mentioned 5 questions maybe?
Yeah, I had kind of scribbled some down earlier. You know, just a statement that we could craft up that basically describes what we're trying to do. That, you know, we're working on designing an urban deer management program and exploring, I don't know what, you know, which would likely include managed archery hunts on, you know, both public and private properties. Private, of course, with permission. You know, that's why I just thought that the questions could be, do you support a deer management program in the city of Waupaca? Chances are I think we're going to hear a pretty positive response to that, but there will be people who will absolutely not agree with that at all. But, well, at least they'll get to be heard. They won't be told that we're doing it, you know, just without any input. Would you be interested in participating in such a program? That means either as a landowner who agrees to, you know, have their property as part of the hunt, or as an actual active hunter. Would you permit authorized hunters on your property? Would you allow a hunter to track a shot animal on your property? And like a comment box for just further information or any other. I mean, this is obviously not worded precisely how we'd want it to, but I think that kind of covers things. And of course, any other ideas for questions without getting too bogged down in the details of a program that we don't even really have yet.
Exactly. Any other suggestions? Henry, is this something you could refine and shoot us an email on or give us an opportunity to comment on it? You had mentioned perhaps including it in the water bill. Is that once a month, or is there a cycle?
We've got a few weeks. It goes out at the end of December.
Okay.
So, you know, could get something out, I don't know, by maybe this time next week in a form for you to comment on.
Is that reasonable, everybody?
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Sounds like the next step to really figuring out what people want
Okay.
or don't want. I think it'd be important to try to get, really figure out if people want to, you know, when we start to identify areas where, isn't there some, isn't it a friend of yours who has a 40-acre parcel or something kind of in the city limits? And, you know, are people who have larger pieces of property, would they be, you know, those are kind of people to approach if they would be interested at all. In addition to just people, because there's some things where like somebody, like I might say like, sure, I want somebody to hunt deer in my backyard. Well, I really actually don't. You know, there's too many liabilities with broadheads flying around in my backyard. You know?
Actually, the individual that owns that 40-acre parcel called me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and their family is hunting it.
Nice.
And so
Good.
because their comment to me was, is the city going to open up that anybody will be able to come on our piece of property and hunt? And I said, no. And they said, okay, thank you, because they do hunt it.
Yeah, that's why this survey I think is a good idea before these like rumors develop and people are thinking that we're going to start invading their yards and shooting deer.
I just please ask the individual to please continue to hunt.
Yeah, excellent.
So.
two of our neighbors were very interested in pursuing taking out some deer in our area. So everyone was there with the exception of the Bethany people. So, and they were all in agreement that we talked about the tracking and all of that. So, I don't know whether they will pursue it or not, but two different neighbors.
But I think those are areas like the Bethany home area back down in by the river that, that's where you get into your tree stands and all of your other stuff. And I mean, well, those are areas that I guess, how much do we want to, I mean, if we get to that point, how much do we want to pursue those areas?
Well, like in our subdivision, there is a little common neighborhood park that is accessible by all the landowners there. And there is a little swampy, I call it the nature preserve, not the swamp, but, you know, where there, I think very easily somebody could take deer right out of there and not be very close to any residences at all. But there too, do we want strangers accessing that when we could have people in our neighborhood?
I think when it comes time to decide, you know, okay, we're going forward and we're doing these managed hunts, I mean, there will need to be, someone might be very willing to have a hunt on their property, but their property isn't suitable. So, I mean, it would need to be assessed, obviously. I mean, as much as I would love for someone to take the deer out of my backyard, that's just not, there's no good way to do that with being safe and in you know, a little bit tighter area on that part of Lake Street. But further up where they're marching down the road every day, down in that wetland where they come moving out of, plenty of room there.
But I think still it would be in the best interest of this committee to still have people that are accountable, and even if those landowners want to hunt in that area, they would still have to register with the city and still have to, if we get to that point, have some kind of a form that they are hunting, and so you as landowners know that they're in there and you know who they are. And by chance, if something would happen, that there are individuals we can turn to, and having, you know, releasing landowners of liability if somebody's sitting in your backyard.
We're still on the agenda item of the multi-metro deer management plan, and I guess I'd like to bring closer to this. If we think it is a workable plan for our city, we'd try to pursue something along those lines. But it does beg the question of the next two agenda items, and I wanted to kind of lump those together. In a conversation with Chief Holzell last week, he is open to the idea of a gun hunt within the city limits on certain parcels of land that may be, you know, safer than others. So to that end, I asked Henry to develop a map for us to look at of those parcels that have 10 or more acres within the city. And you did bring that tonight?
Yeah, it's right down
okay.
here, Alan. Yeah.
So let's take a moment, congregate around the table again, and take a look at that map.
Was that Steve that called you? I talked to Steve, he has a 40 acre behind me.
Maybe there's a different piece.
Light. I talked to Steve and I talked to him. I got it somewhere.
I think they got 10, 15, and 20. Yeah.
I just thought.
Okay, looking at them.
Yeah,
it'd be a little bit
trouble
easier.
with that. I was like,
Airport.
So we're both in the 5th district.
Yellow's 20 plus.
At election time, it's by ward. It's not by. Okay. Well, anyway.
Yeah, you know, but I was kind of like, now I'm questioning my own.
Okay. All right, back to the agenda. The next agenda item is asking the question, are there any techniques that we absolutely do not want to consider as part of this committee? In other words, would we want to not allow gun hunting at all within the city limits?
I do not think it's a good idea.
No gun hunting.
See us try a more concentrated effort, even if it means devising its plan.
I think that'll have a lot better reception with the public for sure. If upon review after we've, want to take in the future, but I think to initially bow and crossbow.
That was my next question. I'm not a hunter, but is there a big difference between bow or crossbow? Just
Yes.
Yeah.
Crossbow is a lot more accurate.
A lot more accurate, a lot more deadly too.
And everything, and you can shoot a little bit farther with them, but they're just like shooting a gun with a scope and everything on them. I mean, 30, 40 yards, you can put like that, no problem.
Is it a consensus then we really don't want to have gun hunting in the city?
I think so.
Show of hands,
Okay.
would want to forbid it and opposed to that? All right, that answers that question then. So we will not consider any gun activity within the city limits, at least as far as the Steer Management Committee goes. We are at the point of setting the next meeting date and what topics we would like to discuss at future meeting. Are Mondays still okay? Not for you, Chuck, I know that.
Well,
Some Mondays,
third Monday is the only Monday.
okay.
October 1st Monday.
Anybody else weigh in on meeting nights? Steve?
Mondays are good.
Yeah, Mondays.
All right. Again in December yet, or sometime in January?
Let's go to January.
Well, can we get a survey done and then kind of be able to digest that a little bit?
So maybe a little bit down into January, in the second.
How about January 9th? It's the second Monday. By that time, Henry will be able to, and the city will be able to have a, what do you want to call, survey? That we can review and then get that ready to be sent out.
Well,
that work?
okay, if we can get the online stuff going really well. The bills go out at the end of December. There's only gonna be 1 week of people that might have paper surveys submitted.
Well,
So
we
we-
had an announcement, put something in the paper that, with the link to the survey, have it on,
Yeah,
WDUX, whatever, and then, the third round of it in the city's, paper billing, we can at least get started
yeah, you'd have a,
collecting some data.
well, we can just see what we come up with.
All right.
Gather them up, but the paper ones, we try to get them pulled together. Yeah.
I know you mentioned, I think you mentioned the conservation. Is that a group that, I know nothing about this, but that we should be talking to and maybe getting their input? Would they be
They might be really,
value to us?
yeah, especially for when we maybe want to design, as the group in Wisconsin Rapids did, which I would very much agree with, having a proficiency test for any of the hunters, and they would be people that would be wise to coordinate with, I feel.
I can speak for the one here in town. We do not have we do have bow hunters out there, but it is a gun club.
Yeah, I've
per
been
se,
out
so
to it, but I thought,
We do not have any targets for arrows or anything out there at our club.
do you think that members of the club who are perhaps hunters would be people we could access, or do we, I don't know.
I really don't think so.
No? Okay. I mean, I've only been out there for youth hunt stuff and, when they did the trap and skeet shooting and whatever.
There-
might be interested in being involved.
There are some bow hunting clubs around the area, I do believe. Be wise maybe to contact, I think there are some, not for sure, but I
Could
know
we-
the one out at King, the Chain of Lakes Club, they do have bow hunt targets out there. I'm not affiliated with that one, so I don't know how that would work on that one, so. I do believe there are some bow hunter clubs around the area, around Waupaca County. You might have to look up with them or find out.
Are there any volunteers for trying to contact bow hunting clubs?
I can talk to them. I
Give it a
have a
try.
number of bow hunting friends, and I can talk the talk with the bow hunters. So
Okay,
I'll,
good,
I'll give
good.
it a whirl.
We'll task you with that then. And if you want to supply any interim results to us via email or something like that, that'd be fine.
Okay, I know, I have your email address via the Waupaca City Council, but other members of the group, maybe we should communicate that way in between our meetings a little bit.
Well, I
like,
would just say,
you know.
suggest we funnel it through Henry.
Okay.
Henry's got all of
Yeah,
it.
Okay.
Didn't we, ask for your emails? I thought we got that.
Oh, I think you have them. I'm not sure.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
You have them. Well, what I can do is, when I send out the draft survey, you can just copy that list, right? Because everybody will have, it'll all be on there.
Anybody can get them.
On the survey, are we gonna give people the option, including name?
Whose contact information?
On the survey, are we going to include the opportunity there, especially if somebody has real feelings about this, that we could be communicating with them?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, I think that's worthwhile as a follow-up. Certainly a place for comments. And then name and email address are optional. And then checkbox say, if you want follow-up, check here and someone will contact you. Okay, next meeting then, January 9th, is that a good date for everyone? 6 o'clock, council chambers?
I will not be able to make that one.
Okay. Anybody else can't do it? Okay, any other business that we should be discussing tonight? I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Okay, by Johnson, second by Whitman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned at 7:09.